No one really knew what to expect from James Paxton coming back from the IL, but I don't think anyone expected this. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Seat Radio. My name is Corbin, and because I'm not going to be able to make a video tomorrow, I wanted to say today a very happy Mother's Day to all the mothers that are a part of Red Seat Radio. You guys are absolutely fantastic, and we wouldn't be here without you, so thank you. I also wanted to give a very special thank you to my own mother, who, without her, I don't know if there would be any Red Seat Radio. She is one of the biggest Red Sox fans I still know today. She was the reason I got into Red Sox baseball at such a young age. And her perseverance has taught me to never give up and continue doing what I love to do. So thank you, Mom. Happy Mother's Day, and I love you. Anyways, the Red Sox signed James Paxton in December of 2021. Since then, we've seen basically nothing, right? He was injured when we signed him. He rehabbed to Tommy John, and it felt like every step of the way there were setbacks. Every possible setback that could have happened with James Paxton happened over the last year and a half. So going into his first start in a Red Sox uniform, in terms of expectations, there really weren't any, right? We knew what James Paxton could possibly be. He was a staple in Major League Baseball for a pretty decent amount of time. He even threw a no-hitter at one point, but that was years ago. What was he going to look like now after rehabbing for so long and getting older with age? So what we're going to do in today's video is we're going to break down James Paxton's first start in a Red Sox uniform. We're going to talk about how it went, why it was important. We're also going to talk about what this could mean for James Paxton going forward and how important and how much of an impact James Paxton could have on the Boston Red Sox in 2023. But before we get into that, do me a favor, make sure you guys have hit that subscribe and that like button. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one. Let's get into it. To say James Paxton went out there and performed last night, in my opinion, is a bit of an understatement. James Paxton had not performed in a major league stadium since April 16th of 2021, over 2 years ago, right? And he only went 1 1/3 inning in that start before he was taken out, and that was eventually when he was told he needed Tommy John surgery. So it had been over 2 years since James Paxton stepped out onto the mound, and the first time he steps onto the mound in a Red Sox uniform in Major League Baseball for over 2 years, James Paxton went out there and he threw 87 total pitches over 5 complete innings. In those innings, he allowed just 2 runs off of a Nolan Arenado rocket and only 4 total hits. Of those 4 hits, the only extra base hit James Paxton allowed all night was that Nolan Arenado home run. But what may be more impressive than just his straight stat line is his command. In those 5 innings, Paxton struck out 9 hitters and only walked 1 batter. He came out for over the first time in 2 years and finished his first start with a 3.60 ERA and a really impressive 2.90 FIP, meaning that there was a possibility that that start could have even gone better for James Paxton, and that may indicate that he may even get better as we go forward here. In terms of his start on the surface, before we dive into deeper statistics and take a look at what this could mean for James Paxton going forward, this is a fantastic accomplishment for a guy who, again, went from being a staple in Major League Baseball, one of the better pitchers in the league, to a guy who was fighting and clawing his way back from injury to just get back into the league. To come out and throw the way that he did on its own is a major accomplishment for James Paxton. And for the Red Sox, this is a major accomplishment as well. This was the first time almost the entire year where a starting pitcher had a fantastic start to the 2023 season, right? Everyone else kind of came out in their first start and stunk it up a little bit. James Paxton was the complete opposite. But even though this is fantastic for James Paxton, and honestly probably fantastic for the Red Sox, what could this indicate about James Paxton's season, and should we be excited or not? I think to really dive into James Paxton's start and find the indications we're looking for as to what James Paxton could look like over the course of the 2023 season, granted if he stays fully healthy, we're going to have to dive into some numbers a little bit. And what I want to start with is his command. Like we talked about in the first part of this video, it really felt like James Paxton's command was the best part of last night. And while it wasn't perfect and there were some mistake pitches, a bunch of them to Nolan Arenado that he punished a couple couple of times, one of them over the monster. In general, James Paxton's command looked fantastic. And the reason I want to start with this is because coming into this game, one of the biggest concerns with James Paxton is what his command was going to look like, because over his 6 appearances with the Worcester Red Sox on his rehab stint, he ended up pitching 21 and 2/3 innings for Worcester, and in those 21 and 2/3 innings, he walked 16 batters. That's a really high walk rate, and that was something that I think a lot of people were nervous about with James Paxton. However, again, last night he only walked one singular batter. Of the 87 pitches he threw, 58 of them were for strikes, which is a strike percentage of 67. He also had 9 swings and misses on strikes in the zone and 19 strikes called, which in my opinion are pretty good numbers for a guy who, again, has not pitched in Major League Baseball in over 2 years. But it wasn't just the command that was getting people excited. He was also getting a lot of people excited with his velocity, specifically on his fastball. Last night, James Paxton averaged 96.3 miles per hour on his four-seam fastball, which is 4 miles an hour faster than the average of his last full season, which was 2020 with the New York Yankees. So I don't know if that has a lot to do with adrenaline and it being his first time back in a major league game in 2 years, but he was also throwing around 96, 97 miles an hour in his rehab starts, and he was hitting that in spring training. So I don't know whether or not it was the elbow and him getting that fixed that helped him reach that velo that he kind of had back in like 2017, 2018, or if it was just simply, I've had a lot of time off from baseball, my arm is feeling fantastic. Either way, James Paxton's velocity is up compared to his last season, but it's not even just the velocity and the command, it's the movement on his pitches as well. Taking a look at the movement on his pitches last night, James Paxton averaged around 13.6 inches of vertical drop on his fastball. That is drop from when he releases the ball to when it gets to the catcher. The fastball was dropping about 13.6 inches, which is a bit down from his career average, which is sitting right around 14.7, 14.8. But at the same time, too, it's still really good vertical movement. And what's more impressive than his fastball still having a bit of bite to it is the fact that his cutter was fantastic. His cutter last night was averaging a vertical drop of 34.4 inches, which is higher compared to his last full season, again in 2020, at 31.9 inches. So his cutter is moving more than it had moved in his last full season. On top of that, too, his curveball was on par with what we have seen and what we expected from the past in James Paxton. Last night, his curveball dropped around 48.7 inches vertically, which compared to his 2020 average was 50.7. So we only lost about 2 inches on his curveball. And again, that is probably something we're going to see him develop as he gets more starts in a Red Sox uniform. But all of those are really great indications that James Paxton is looking a lot better, and not just in a fluky way. Now, this is only one start, right? It's a really small sample size, so it's kind of impossible to make any legitimate declarations as to how James Paxton's season is going to go. But taking a look at the deeper numbers here, his velocity being up, his movement being on par, and sometimes even better than what we have seen in the past, and his command being there are all fantastic signs that James Paxton is here and he's here to play. Now, realistically, there are going to be ups and downs with James Paxton this year. The biggest reason for that is because James Paxton is learning to be a true pitcher again, right? For the last 2 years, he was just trying to be a thrower. He was just trying to be a guy who can get the ball over the plate consistently without getting hurt again. This time, he now has to relearn how to be a starting pitcher, a guy who can consistently get guys out and almost get back to that art form that is pitching, kind of like we've seen with Chris Sale so far this year. But again, these are absolutely fantastic numbers, and they're numbers that should give you hope as to how James Paxton can do over the 2023 season. And it's definitely something the Red Sox can take away from this game and say, yeah, I'm feeling a little bit more confident about James Paxton. And speaking of the Boston Red Sox, how is this going to affect this Red Sox team? Well, in the best way possible, right? The Red Sox have kind of been missing that sort of anchor, consistent pitcher in this rotation, and there have been a lot of issues with consistency for the Red Sox so far this year from starting pitching. If James Paxton can sit around that 4 ERA that he's at right now after just one start the entirety of the year, that's going to be really, really huge for this Red Sox team. If you're able to add a consistent James Paxton onto guys like Chris Sale, who's had 3 good starts in a row, Brian Bayo, who's really settling into his role, Tanner Houck, who's been sort of your constant throughout the 2023 season, and Corey Kluber, who has looked better over the last couple of days, this rotation starts to look a whole lot different. Then you add in options like Garrett Whitlock, Nick Pivetta, Cutter Crawford even possibly. You start to add in those guys on top of this, and your rotation's starting to look a lot better than it has so far this year, because so far this year, your biggest pain point has been the starting pitching. So to get James Paxton back and to get him back looking like this is absolutely fantastic news. Again, there are going to be bumps, and I'm not going to sit here and declare that James Paxton's going to look like this every single game throughout 2023. But again, if he could stay around that 4 ERA and be a consistency in this Red Sox rotation, he could genuinely change the entire landscape of this Red Sox rotation in the best possible way. Either way, absolutely fantastic to see James Paxton come back and do what he did last night. It really is just a true testament to the romantic side of baseball. But that's just my opinion, so let me know in the comment section down below. What did you think of James Paxton's start last night? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Were there concerns? What did you think of James Paxton's first start in a Red Sox uniform and his first start in Major League Baseball in 2 years? Let me know all your thoughts on James Paxton's start in the comment section down below. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe and that like button. Helps these videos out a ton, and it would mean a lot to me. Thank you to all the moms in Red Seat Radio. Thank you to my mom specifically, and thank you for clicking on this one. I will see you in the Red Seats.